So I've been doing property for a little while now. That's the main thing I do. I buy property, I and I rent it out. Don't really sell or do anything fancy. Pretty straightforward. I own an estate agent as well. That looks after portfolio and other landlords' portfolios. I, as you mentioned earlier, I wrote a book on the whole property investment journey. So that's just out there. Amazon. I did that because one of my brothers was saying, "Look, you're making money in the whole property thing, and you haven't kind of showed me." And I thought I was quite transparent. So I said, I'm going to write a book to tell you exactly how I did it and what I do and my strategies. So that's why I did that. Most recently, as of November, so we're in 2023 January, but November 2022, I purchased a Caribbean restaurant. It's called the Jamaican. It's in Tottenham, and that's my latest venture. So that's what I do, as well as being a dad and a husband, and all-round family guy.
Just tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay, so I was born in Jamaica. I came to the UK when I was like 7, and I had a deeper voice then with my patois. I came and I went straight to primary school in Islington, Holloway, which I grew up single parent with my mum and my older sister, my brother, and my younger sister came along.
What was the push to come to England at the time? What do you remember much about Jamaica before you came over?
Well, one of the things that I remember that just comes straight to my head is, so my mum came over here first from Jamaica and basically worked in the hospitals and doing domestic work to save up to pay for us to come over. So she left me and my brother, my sister in Jamaica. I stayed with my gran. And when I heard that, she finally saved up money and reals coming, is that in Jamaica they say everybody that goes to England turns mad. So I was a little bit scared as a little boy hearing that people go crazy when they come to England. So
what does she mean by that?
Like they just lose their minds. They just that's what I took away from the comments that I heard. Yeah, that's one of the memories that come to my head, to be fair.
Okay, so you've come from Jamaica, you come straight to England. What was your first thoughts when you arrived? Apart from thinking everyone's crazy over here, what was your first thoughts on arrival?
I'm struggling to remember, if I'm honest. It was just all new, and I remember I didn't do much schooling in Jamaica, so I came here, and I was kind of on the back foot. I was very much not top of the class. I had a best friend at the time, or someone I was always with, and we was kind of at the same level, and I just thinking, wow, where is this place? It's just a new land to me. So it was all an adventure right to start.
Was your father in your life at all, would you say?
At that moment in time when I was coming here, no, I didn't have much recollection of him at all. And then throughout my years, not until I was probably in my 19, where I was a bit more aware of him. But he lived in Jamaica, so we came up and left him. So not at all. My mum was my mom and dad. To be fair, she was and I think you mentioned earlier my inspiration. It was my mum. Watching her, she's really hard worker. She was, she always wasn't happy to just settle as well. Like I said, she started to do she was doing working in hospitals and so on, and since then she's moved up. She went and studied and retrained and became a qualified social worker. And even when she did that, she then went management and so on and so forth. So she never was comfortable. She always wanted the next step. And so yeah, that she is my hero and my inspiration for growing up.
Aside from your mum, who were the other key, like when I say mentors, I don't mean mentors in business, mentors in life that you would look up to when you was growing up?
I'm trying to think, to be honest. Maybe inspiration, LL Cool J, all the girls. I don't know. Back then, business wise, there wasn't anyone that I could really go to or talk to. Even when I got into property, there's one guy that I went to uni with, and he was a bit more forward thinking in terms of property. He's the only person I had mentioned buying a property or anything. But in the neighbourhood that I grew up in, the flats that no one owned their property, there was all council, and majority of us were all single parent. It was like the exception where someone had their mum and dad and they actually lived in a house that they bought. It wasn't the norm in what I grew up in. In the block that I grew up in, for instance, I noticed what just comes to mind. I know people getting their gyros. I noticed on the gyro they will go and they'll buy some weed and buy some drink, and that was kind of like, I don't know, like their world. In the estate that I grew up, I saw, the older guys. But I feel like, because someone says, oh, what inspires you? But there's something in me, because even my mom said to me, like, my mom used to like make corned beef, and then there was like this mackerel, like tin mackerel, and what else, like spam. I was like, no, I'm not eating that. From a young boy, I was like, what is that? Spam, like, and she's like, look, when you grow up, you need to make your own money because your taste is too rich for me. You got to earn some serious money, because I liked from very young. I didn't like any of those tin mackerel or anything like that I didn't think were good quality, and I always wanted, like, I had good taste in things. I wanted the expensive things. So.
You like the fine things of life, the finest.
I wouldn't even say it was that fine. I just didn't want to eat spam with that. Yeah. So yeah, it was kind of like, for instance, we used to go out. So we used to go Roller Express in Edmonton and so on. We used to take the bus, like, I don't know, this is in my teens, 14, 13. And then, on the way back, you'd buy a bagel from the bagel shop. But I used to be in the bagel shop and I'd buy like a buttered bagel. Then I'd buy one with like filling, and then have two bagels. And I remember, negotiating, even KFC, I'd be like, okay, but I want that chicken. And always kind of trying to get a deal in that respect. Even in school, Monday, we used to get dinner tickets. So Monday, everyone had their dinner tickets. So I could buy it off people cheap. So I'd buy their dinner tickets from them because everyone's got it. So and then come Wednesday, people are a bit hungry now. They don't have their dinner tickets. Some of them sold it, and I'll be selling the dinner tickets at a higher price. And it's like, it's funny because now I'm thinking, like, obviously there wasn't much demand on Monday for dinner tickets because everyone had one, right? And everyone's got their pocket money come Monday. As it goes further on in the week, the demand drops. So yeah, just from very young, when I reflect, I notice myself doing certain things.
How did you acquire your first property?
Yeah, so I was working a couple of jobs at the time, one being Debenhams. I was also studying at uni at the time, and yeah, it was a little bit easier back then, 1998, around October time, when I purchased my first property, and how it came about is that, when I saw my brother and my sister both get kicked out. So my mom's quite traditional, like, if you're acting too big in the house, it's time for you to move. If you're not doing your part, her first thing is, basically, you need to move on if you're not helping out. So, when you get to your teenage years, I was going out partying, I was kind of relaxing quite a bit. And I saw the signs that was evident when my brother and sister were came of age, where she was like, okay, you need to move out now. And they, ended up getting like bed sits and then moving into friends, and I didn't want no part of that. I wanted to move out into my own place and have my own independence. So I saw the signs and the moanings that they used to get, and I was trying to be proactive. So I went to the council, and they said I've got no chance. Basically being a healthy young man. And then I looked at renting privately and looked at buying and thought, actually, it makes most sense to actually buy. So I wanted to kind of go down that route rather than be just giving rent money over and have nothing come back. So that just made sense to me. It was like, yeah, that's definitely the way to go.
Yeah. How old was you when you acquired your first property?
I was about 21. Yeah.
So a lot of people try to still find themselves around that time, but you managed to acquire property at that age. So from that point, was it from that point you decided you wanted to get into property, or you just bought a property and thought about it later on down the line?
Yeah, it wasn't that I was some clever guy that thought that was that smart. Because at the time as well, a lot of my friends was like, what are you doing buying a property? Like, you should be partying and stuff. So a lot of people laughed when I mentioned that, actually, this is what I'm going to do, and thought he was just talking. But yeah, I did it. And then I think I lived in there. And after a couple of years, I was like, okay, there was another opportunity for me to buy something else. And I made that happen, and I rented this one out, and I thought, okay, this property thing makes a lot of sense, because now, I had one property, and I had property I'm living in, and the property renting out was giving me extra income. And I noticed that where I was working, I was at an advantage, because come payday, everyone started bringing their sandwiches in. There was, they were really like on the breadline on wage day, where I still had a backup income. I had an income coming in, so I wasn't that as dependent on my wage as they were. And then I think it was after the second one that I really kind of thought, actually, this is the way to go.
Setting up your actual business for the first time, you've decided, okay, this is the way you want to go now. What was the key things you had to do?
I was working in Docklands, doing accountancy, and I kind of thought, do you know what? I've spending this time doing accountancy, but I've made so much more money in property. Why don't I just put a focus on that? So that was like end of 2007, 2008, that I really then decided I created this company called White Knight Property Solutions. And it wasn't a stroke of genius, it was just like that. I finished my accountancy studies around that time. And then the credit crunch was happening. So the company I set up was a company that helped people that were facing repossessions. So I did marketing to find people that were facing repossession that needed help, because obviously when you get repossessed, then the banks take your house, they sell it, whatever they get, and you could still owe them. So I was trying to find some win-win, where I bought the property for cheaper than what it would go on the market value, and that person still got a good amount of money. They can move on and try again without being like blacklisted for 6 years and so on and so forth. So it was actually lucky that I started at that time, because again the market was right in terms of people that were in difficult situations at that particular time. Just like the dinner tickets, where it was the timing that made the difference there.
Yeah. What were the hurdles that you had to go through? Give us an example of one of your difficult situations,
Cases
how
that
you
were
handled it. Yeah.
So there's okay. I'll give you two different examples. First of all, when I bought my first property, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I bought a property that was on endowment, an endowment mortgage, which they don't have them now because they're such a bad deal. So I took out a Santander mortgage back then, and obviously the guy that was selling it to me, he just wanted to sell and get his commission. And I thought, okay, this guy seems genuine, but maybe he genuinely didn't know how bad it was, and I took that out. And that was like a difficult conversation, because I think at that time I just about made the income bracket with like 2 part-time jobs and so on. So it was like, okay, I just want to get through this and get my property and move on. So that was the first difficult thing, because I didn't know what I was doing. The second, when I'm actually looking at this now as like, this is what I want to do, and speaking to people about buying their properties, that most people that are facing repossession, for example, they're burying their heads in the sand because things are happening, they're stressed out, banks calling them wanting money, and they haven't got it. So a lot of them bury their heads in the sand first of all and don't take any action, and then it just snowball effects and they repossess before they know. So getting those people to engage with you, I found really difficult. And they just wouldn't follow through, which you'd expect from someone that generally buries their heads in the sand when there's problems. So actually helping them was quite difficult. And there's a number of cases where people just said they was going to do things and they didn't, and it was just difficult to engage.
Yeah. So how did you handle those type of situations where you just kind of moved on, or found out?
Both really, like just really trying to get people to understand. Because, for instance, if you say to somebody, I'll help you if you face some repossession, a lot of their families, but he's getting it for cheap, and he's ripping you off. And it's like, well, am I? if they can help, please. So just breaking it down so they see that it's a win-win situation. I win and they win, and I need to make some profit. Otherwise, why am I doing that? And they need to get out of the situation and have enough money to buy something else. So it's really being transparent with them and just going through the figures, say, look, this is what you need to clear the bank, and holding their hand through that process, because sometimes it's lonely when you're out there with the stress, embarrassment. They want someone coming in, and then you're telling them your personal details that you feel embarrassed about. So getting them to realize that I'm not a shark, or just someone that actually genuinely wants to help and helping themselves at the same time, and then realizing that it's business, that there needs to be a profit in there for me, and there needs to be something a win for them as well.
Through the whole COVID situation, how did you manage to sustain your business through that?
In COVID, in regards to my tenants and my personal portfolio, I think all of them were great except for one person. They just decided, look, I'm not going to sit here, I'm going to go back to my country. And he just gave me a week's notice, but within that time I was able to rent the property out anyway. In regards to the estate agency, we were hit initially because we couldn't go out and do viewings and so on and so forth. So I actually spent a lot of time during COVID using that opportunity to do training. So where I was, kind of letting the estate agency and people do their thing generally on day to day, there's managers in there and so on. I really needed to kind of come back and just be at the forefront to say, look, this is happening. However, we're going to use this opportunity. And we used a lot of technology as well, i.e. we was on the first ones to use what's it called, I360, where you could do virtual tours and show people properties without physically being there. So we quickly adapted, and then we spent a lot of time just upskilling ourselves, because it was a real time for, I had a young lady that she had to do homeschooling, single parent, and she had to work, and so on, and she wasn't allowed out. And so it was kind of like mentally draining for everyone, and it was mentally challenging, for people just to stay sane at that time. So a lot of my time was spent really nurturing staff, and other people, like my friends would call and say, we've got furlough, so we're just chilling. Like, they had a lot of free time, but it was the busiest period for me that I've ever had, because I had to make sure that the team stayed focused, stayed motivated. It was upskilling for me as well, to, like, I had to go and study, how to address these mental health issues when people are feeling the way they were feeling. So it wasn't, so the business opportunity was that we were able to then do a lot of viewings virtually and use the technology. And then on the other side, it was more of us bonding and building as a company. And there's another opportunity there to improve our processes and systems. We spent a lot more time on that, because we had the downtime rather than, us being out viewing properties and so on. So the win was improving our systems, improving ourselves, just encouraging staff to go on walks and so on and so forth. So, and we ended up at one time doing virtual exercise together as a company. We had a lady on the Zoom. We had a lady that did Pilates, and we all did it as a company and so on. So there's a lot of team bonding going on back then.
I guess it's quite a responsibility to, maintain staff's sanity through something like that. And obviously they're probably worried about their jobs and, are they going to keep their jobs and things like that. So, and it weighs heavily on you as a leader as well.
Yeah, especially when the money wasn't coming in then, because our doors had to be locked, so the money's not coming in. And then you still got staff, and like you said, bills have to be paid, and staff need to be paid.
So you managed to retain all your staff around that time?
Around that time, yeah.
Brilliant. And up to now?
Yeah, but, it's not just me, but the government really helped at that time. The furlough was really helpful. And, and we had to get innovative to make sure that we still did some deals in the situation that we was in, by being agile and taking on the new technology.
Tell us a little bit about how you manage your personal life, like relationships with your family, your wife, your kids, and run a business. How much did that take away from family life, and how do you balance it?
For me, my experience is that there are times, like I said, I had plenty of time to be at home at those times, but then there are other times where the business needs you and you're away, and I've always said, to be honest, about balance, but it's difficult to get balance all the time. So sometimes you do have to bury yourself in work and be focused to get the job done, and at those times is when sometimes you can't be around as much as you want to for the family. And you notice it more because children are very they're just transparent. So if I'm away too much, my daughter will be like, oh, I want mommy to put me to bed. When I'm around, it's like, oh, daddy will put me to bed. So I notice, and she will tell me if I'm not around enough. And so one thing I do try and do is protect my time. Like, So people will say, oh, why don't you go and do seminars and, you know, talk about your book and do what? And it's like, no, I don't need to do seminars I don't want to do it because I do want to help people, but at the same time, I want to be there, like at all the key stages for my kids and be there, because otherwise the guilt, there's a massive element of guilt when you're not around. For instance, when I was doing my HMO, me and my business partner were just there all the time because the builders were just a nightmare. So I was absent quite a bit because I would leave first thing in the morning and come back when it's late. So they're already asleep. So I've missed a number of days on the trot. So it is very difficult to try and get that balance, and you think, you know, what's it for? It is for the kids and it is for yourself because you need purpose. So with me, we spoke about success earlier, and it's not about the money. It is about having choices, and it is about progression. Yeah. So I don't want to work every hour God sends doing something for money. I guess I'm in a privileged situation where I don't need extra. And also knowing contentment, because I'm financially independent, because I don't need to have like a jet. I don't need to have like a massive mansion in wherever I'm living, kind of like within my means, so I can have that flexibility. A lot of people say, yeah, they work X amount of hours and they X amount of money, but if you're not having that quality of life and being able to do what you want when you want, then it's not success for me. Relationship wise, like my partner's amazing. She's very supportive, but she will tell me if I'm going too far, and like she'll say, hold on, the kids said they haven't. So I do pull back, and I'm aware, but she's an amazing support that just, you know, fits in. Where I'm weak, she's very strong.
Tell us, Craig, how you managed to pivot into the restaurant business and where you saw your opening and why.
I've always had a passion for it. Even when I was young, when I was very young actually, I used to, instead of reading comic books and stuff, I used to read cooking books, and I used to make a lot of stuff. People used to come to my house and I'd be making food. Because the house that I grew up in is very much like, I'd say, you can't say there's nothing to eat. My mom would say there's flour, there's butter, there's rice, like, you know, naming all these things, where, you know, other people's moms would say there's crisps, there's biscuits. We didn't have that. We have to make. So I grew up being very handy in the kitchen. There's nothing that I can't really make. So I had a passion for the whole food thing, and I've got a passion for it. And properties, obviously I've done the property, so food was something that I looked at. I wasn't sure about it. However, how this one came about is that outside of business, a group of friends and I, we put some money in the pot, kind of like for like drinking money, or like just for money that we're not going to care about. So we put it in the pot, and we've tried to invest in a couple of businesses with it or help people. So I've ended up using that money to loan some money. So I loaned some money to somebody that was in the restaurant business, and then I got to see that, you know, they can pay this money back really quickly. So, you know, this business is quite good, made me interested in it. And then I just saw that it just needed really a lift and like basics, because the foundations were already there in this particular restaurant. The food was good, and it had a good customer base. So all it needed was to just bring up to date really, and add some technology.
So did you take over that business, or?
Yes, it was a longer story because it was how I got to take over, but basically I just purchased it in the end, because we tried to do it together, but the best route was for me to just buy the other person out.
Where can they find your restaurant?
Okay, yeah, so it's 13 Northumberland Park Road in Tottenham, N17, OTA, and we're right opposite the Sainsbury's.
What can you say to youngsters that are probably 15, 16, going to college, not knowing what to do themselves, that may want to go into these businesses? What sort of advice can you give them right now if they're sitting down not knowing what to do?
All right. So the first thing I'd say is it all starts with the mind. Like, there was a nursery that I was supposed to open up at one point, and someone said, "Oh, it's so hard. It's so hard." When I did the research, I realized it's not that hard. It's not that many red tape. The reason I didn't do it is because the property I was going to do it, the council wouldn't give the planning permission for parking. So the lesson here is that there isn't anything that can't be achieved, and if you have it in your head that you can do it and how to do it, and go for it, then it could all happen. Everything that I've tried so the whole property thing, everyone said I couldn't do it, and at that age now, the people that said that I couldn't do it, they're saying, "Why didn't you tell me to do it when you was doing it?" And so, like, it's just about having in your head, having that mindset that it can be done, and also like realize, like, I think what distinguishes me from a few other people that are around me is that if I say that I'm going to do something, I'm really putting my all into it, and I feel that if you're putting your all into it, it's got to happen. It can only happen. So mindset and believing that you can do it, and then things will just fall into place if you're putting your all into it and you're really thinking it will happen.